5 liters of blood. He was held as a slave for 7 years. A very violent scene that almost got the movie taken off the market. In Pulp Fiction, Tarantino didn't want you to see this. After being turned down by every big studio, he shot something so strange that people still only talk about it in whispers. Not only was the scene cut, it was also removed. This is why no one should have ever known it existed. Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary, 2 young movie fans, got the idea for their crazy movies in a small video shop in Manhattan Beach. One of those ideas grew into something much bigger than either of them thought it would be. This play was called Pandemonium Reigns and was written by Avary. There was a strange story about a gold watch, a pawn shop, and a man in a leather mask inside. That powerful and strange part would later become an important part of Pulp Fiction. The way Tarantino and Avary worked together was different from how most Hollywood couples work together. When Reservoir Dogs got some attention, the members got together in Amsterdam to start putting scenes together, sometimes by taping together parts of scripts. He soon left, though, to make his own movie called Killing Zoe. It took Tarantino almost 2 years of work to rewrite and improve the story. He came up with most of the funny lines, but Avary's ideas were still very important. Both of them got the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay when the movie came out. Avary just thanked his wife and said he had to go to the bathroom. His speech was so strange. That night was the best time for them to work together creatively. For some reason, they never worked together again after that. However, Pulp Fiction comes from a much older story. The term was first used in the 1890s, long before Tarantino did. The rough wood pulp paper used to make cheap books possible, so they could be sold for almost nothing. These pulps became very famous very quickly. They had a lot of scary, exciting, mysterious, and science fiction stories. People couldn't stop reading them. A magazine called Argosy was one of the first. It quickly caught on and sold more than 500,000 copies every month. Nick Carter, a detective who has been in thousands of stories over the years, was first presented in these stories. The pulps changed the way Americans read and thought about stories. They were real fast-paced and had characters that were bigger than life. Tarantino wanted his movie to catch that spirit, which is rough, shocking, and full of style. His title was more than just catchy. It was an ode to that crazy world with no rules. Still, it wasn't easy to make Pulp Fiction. A deal was made between Tarantino and director Lawrence Bender in 1993. It came with a small office and just enough cash to start showing the script to movie companies. At first, everything looked good. Colia Tristar even said it was a project that was being worked on. Things quickly got worse, though. The movie was taken off the market by the summer. A business leader said it was the worst writing they had ever read. They didn't like how figures died and then came back. They did not get the joke. It was too scary, too strange, and didn't make sense to them. Some people even thought that the scenes with the heroine would ruin the whole thing. A lot of people said it wasn't worth it without a big star. That turn down made room for Miramax. Harvey Weinstein read the script and loved it. The company had just been bought by Disney. He didn't care about the weird plot or the crazy scenes. He saw something interesting. Miramax gave Tarantino full power over the project and paid for the $8. $5 million cost. They even spent $500,000 less than they planned to. It all came together because of one smart move. They didn't pay big-name stars a lot of money. Instead, they paid everyone the same amount each week. In the early 1990s, John Travolta's career was pretty much over. He was the has-been from Grease, and all he was known for was baby-talking with Kirstie Alley. The suits in Hollywood lost it when Quentin Tarantino said he wanted him to play Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction. As soon as Harvey Weinstein got his deal with Miramax Disney, he fought hard to stop it. He was after Daniel Day-Lewis. He even made Chopin an offer, but Tarantino refused. Once they got into a nasty fight, Travolta's pay dropped from millions to just $140,000. The risk, though, changed everything. After getting nominated for an Oscar, Travolta was back on top, and Weinstein had to take back what he said. Samuel L. Jackson was fighting his own war at the same time. He thought he was playing Jules until he heard that Paul Calderon almost got the part instead. Jackson walked into the interview angry and with a greasy big kahuna burger in his hand. Someone in charge of the studio even called him Lawrence Fishburne by accident. It didn't help. When Jackson lost it, he let out all of Jules Winfield's anger in the room, which stopped everyone in their tracks. That performance wasn't fake, it was real, and the Jerry curl wig was just a mistake. Jackson loved it, but someone bought the wrong one. He said it made him feel like the NWA. Yes, Tarantino said. After that, there was Matt Dillon. Tarantino gave him the part of Butch Killage. He lost it, which was his job. Dillon was not sure and said he would think about it. Planned to play Vincent instead. He missed a big part because of that one pause, and Bruce Willis filled it the next day. Vincent was also on his list, but when he saw that Butch was free, he took it. No doubts, no pride, just gut, and it worked. Even more so in that creepy pawn shop scene. Afterward, Dillon stood back and watched the movie become a huge hit, while Willis made a lot of money from one of his most famous parts. Then Uma Thurman showed up. She wasn't even on the short list at first. Before her, Michelle Pfeiffer, Meg Ryan, and even Madonna were thought of. She didn't like the story when she read it, but her agent saw potential and pushed her to meet Tarantino. She changed her mind after a long lunch and a deep talk in her New York apartment. That was it. Now her name is Mia Wallace. It's hard to forget that picture of her with the cigarette on the bed. It put her on the A-list of Hollywood stars right away. At first, none of this was meant to happen. Michael Madsen played the part of Vincent that Tarantino wrote for him. He tried to link it to Reservoir Dogs, but Madsen left for a Western. The same goes for Lawrence Fishburne. He knew Jules was meant for him, but he thought the story made the heroine look too good. There were even plans to make Vincent and Jules into two British guys, played by Tim Roth and Gary Oldman. People also brought up Eddie Murphy and Charles S. Dutton. All of those names were gone when Jackson walked in, though. Something strange took place at Cannes on a late May night in 1994. A midnight showing that is usually only for weirdos or people looking to join a cult turned into a big event all of a sudden. The movie wasn't sneaked into the event because it was just plain silly. The door was kicked down. Harvey and Bob Weinstein flew the whole group to France as if it were the premiere of a big movie, not an arty independent film. Travolta, Jackson, Thurman, and Willis were always in the sights of the cameras. The excitement was electric. The movie had scenes that didn't make sense, harsh language, and violent scenes, but people couldn't take their eyes off of it. They were split up. It took 4 people to decide where to give the top prize. 4 made the case for Tarantino. Clint Eastwood, who was in charge of the jury, broke the tie. This movie won the Palme d'Or. That was it. Everyone knew who Quentin Tarantino was, but that was only the start. When they got back to the U.S., the Weinstein didn't slow down. A publicity effort was put together as if it were an invasion. While most independent creators would let the movie speak for itself, they chose to make it speak for itself instead. At the Eden Rock, they had a fancy lunch. A lot of signs with Uma Thurman's face were put up. They had parties on yachts and asked strong critics to help them. The company that originally dropped the movie because of drug scenes even agreed to give up the rights. They all put $8 million on a movie with a lot of violent language that didn't have a clear genre. Then the craziest part came. Pulp Fiction didn't just open in a few small houses. It opened in over 300 theaters across America. That was never seen before for an independent film. Studios thought they were crazy. The movie was held back after it was finished and only shown at a few important film festivals. This created a wave of interest in the title. people rushed to see it when it finally opened all the way. It made $9.3 million in its first weekend, just enough to beat Stallone's The Specialist. There was a big drop in sales for Stallone's movie, but trashy fiction kept going. It was something that people talked about, quoted, and watched again and again week after week. It didn't lose much in its second weekend compared to the big-budget action movies that came out that weekend. There was no doubt who had won the real fight by the end of the year. Not only did Pulp Fiction make money, it changed the rules. With $8 million to spend, it made more than $213 million around the world. Hollywood was shocked by that kind of comeback. It showed that R-rated movies with weird characters and long talks could beat big-budget movies at the box office. After Disney bought Miramax, they realized all of a sudden that their strange little company might be stronger than they thought. The Oscars saw two of them, 7 votes, one for Best Picture. That one wasn't won. That was what Forrest Gump did, but that loss is still talked about today. The briefcase in Pulp Fiction has been one of the most talked about movie secrets for decades. It's gold, it shines, and every time someone opens it, they look like they saw something holy. What was inside that case, though? Fans have made up some crazy ideas about it, but the most common one is that it held Marcellus Wallace's soul. They point to the creepy 666 code on the lock and the strange bandage on his back. Some people even say that's where his soul went. That old story about the devil taking souls from people through the back of the head. It sounds crazy, but it makes sense when you watch the scene again where Vincent opens the case and looks at it like he's under a spell. The fact that Jules lived through a shootout and said it was God's help only adds to the idea that the case is about a lot more than money. But not all people believe in the soul idea. Some fans who are more realistic think the bag was full of diamonds, just like the ones in Reservoir Dogs. Around the middle of the 1990s, this idea really took off when people began to think that the two movies might be linked. Vincent and Vic Vega from Reservoir Dogs are meant to be brothers after all. Tarantino thought about making a movie about them. This idea got stronger when one of the co-writers of Pulp Fiction said that the case was supposed to hold diamonds at first. Fans stuck with that idea even if they dropped it while shooting, especially after Tarantino said that most of his movies take place in the same world. That meant the diamond idea wasn't just a guess. It fit into the bigger picture. Then there's the most strange idea of all of them. Some say that Elvis Presley's golden lame suit was in the bag. Yes, the one on his well-known record cover. The idea went viral online years after the movie came out, even though it sounds crazy. Fans brought up an aside from Jules where he says it's just his boss's dirty laundry. He might not have been kidding. Also, the bright light makes sense if it's coming from the gold suit's shiny surface. It's not that crazy either, since Tarantino is a big Elvis fan and even had an Elvis character in True Romance. For that reason, some people say the characters act like they're seeing something famous. It had nothing to do with value, it had to do with power in culture, but here's the catch. Tarantino did not want you to understand what was in the bag. That was the whole point. He said it many times in talks. He wanted people to fill in the holes and figure out what it all meant for them. He even did the same thing with Aldo Rain's mysterious neck scar in Inglourious Basterds. It's just how he is. Let people argue and wonder for a long time. Most people remember the crazy scene in Pulp Fiction where Vincent Vega shoots Marvin in the face out of the blue, leaving blood all over the car. That being said, they don't know that what we saw in the end movie was the toned-down version. Something much worse was filmed by Tarantino. It wasn't CGI that made Marvin's whole head explode in the original scene. It was a full-on prosthetic bust of actor Phil Lamar. That head burst in the most realistic and shocking way possible because it was made just for this one event. It was filled with fake blood, brain matter, and explosive charges. They used more than 5 gallons of blood and shot it in a Chevy Nova at a studio in Burbank for almost 3 hours. But that cut never made it into the movie in the end. It wasn't an interesting change, it was a trick. Tarantino planned to give the MPAA ratings board something to cut because he knew they would ask him to tone it down. He added this over-the-top dramatic scene even though he knew it wouldn't last. That way, if the ratings board wanted changes, he could cut out the head explosion and keep the creepy basement scene with the. That scene was much more upsetting but not as obviously violent. By taking out the head blast, Tarantino made it look like he gave in, but he really got everything he wanted. Phil LaMarr finally told the whole story after many years. He said that Tarantino told him straight out that the head blowing up was a setup in an interview for the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction. "People, we're going to show this young black kid getting his brains blown out for the ratings, so you can leave in some other things," he said. LaMarr was only 27 years old when he played Marvin. He was only in the movie for a short time, but that part followed him around forever. He worked 3 days and only got $5.00. "I got a lot of work as a voice actor in shows like Futurama and Samurai Jack after that one part." There was a scene in Pulp Fiction's first cut that never made it to theaters. It might have changed how we see Mia Wallace and Vincent Vega. Before their famous night out at Jack Rabbit Slim's, Mia gives Vincent a hand-held camera as a present. She's in her living room, being fun but also nosy as she asks him a bunch of strange questions very quickly. It wasn't just small talk. She tried to figure out who he was. One of the most important things she asked, "Do you like the Beatles or Elvis?" Vince didn't need to say it. Mia knew he was all Elvis. It may not seem important, but that one thing set the tone for everything else. While Vincent tried to stay calm, she had the upper hand by playing the host who was strange and unreliable. The way she slowly turned a silly game into something much more personal showed that she liked to put people to the test. Vincent, who was always cool, went along with it, even as she pushed harder. It wasn't love that made them click. It started with a strange power fight that was full of mystery and charm. It felt right, but you could feel the stress rising before they even left the house. This is the part that most people miss. After that, when they walk into Jack Rabbit's arms and legs, Mia smiles and says, "An Elvis man should love this." That line sounds like a fun filler in the final cut. In the first scene, though, it made perfect sense. She already knew he liked Elvis. That restaurant, which has a retro 1950s feel, kitsch decor, and a rock and roll vibe, wasn't chosen at chance. It went with Vincent's style and way of life. That one cut scene gave the whole dinner scene more meaning and showed how well Mia knew him from the start. That scene was great to Quentin Tarantino. He wrote it many years before the movie was made. But he had to make a tough choice when it was time to edit. The speed wasn't right. The talk was too long and felt too much like something you'd seen in a dozen movies by the early 1990s. Tarantino didn't want his movie to feel old because he doesn't follow trends. For the sake of flow, he cut out one of his favorite parts of the scene between Mia and Vincent. This move shows how carefully each and every part of Pulp Fiction was made. He wasn't afraid to lose a good scene as long as it meant the bigger picture stayed tight and sharp. One scene from Pulp Fiction's first cut never made it to the big screen, but it almost did. Eric Stoltz, who played Lance the drug dealer, gave a rant that was so angry and rambling that it went on for almost 3 minutes. The picture was taken in October 1993 and shows something eerily perfect. Lance went on and on about how a gas station worker in Panorama City gave him the wrong directions. It wasn't by chance, it was planned. This cocky guy took him on a pointless 40-minute drive through the valley. Lance lost it. He went from being a little upset to having a complete meltdown, yelling and waving his arms around like he was crazy. Some of the conversation was written down, but Stoltz made up a lot of it on the spot. And Tarantino loved every second of it. It was mean, angry, and funny in a strange way. It was meant to be a follow-up to the scene before it, in which Vincent Vega goes crazy because someone keys his beloved Malibu. The same mood and theme. Two dangerous guys getting angry over small, silly things. Tarantino wanted to show that even though these guys live with guns, drugs, and death every day, small things can still bother them. In the original plot, the two scenes went right into each other. Vince's rant came first, then Lance's, and then the date with Mia. That was the point. When you think they're being silly, make you laugh, and then hit you with a scene about an overdose. It was meant to make you think weird things, and it did. But Tarantino had a problem when the final cut was being made in early 1994. It was almost 3 hours long, and the show needed to end. He loved the Lance speech and had watched it many times in the editing room, but he knew it was becoming too long. That's how he cut it. His director, Sally Mankey, said it was the hardest choice they had to make for the movie. He said it was a great scene, but it was killing his movie. His choice shows how far he's ready to go to keep his beat tight. He won't be afraid to cut out gold that gets in the way. It was Harvey Keitel who taught him that when he was a Reservoir Dog and told him to kill his pets. Since then, Tarantino has stuck to that rule. That person cut 90 minutes off of Django Unchained one time. Yes, even if something is great, it's gone if it doesn't help the bigger picture. Why did that happen to Lance's rant? It was funny, scary, and something I will never forget. However, if the beat slows down even for a second, it gets lost in Tarantino's world. For decades, people have been haunted by the scene in Pulp Fiction. Not because of what is shown, but because of what isn't said. One time, Quentin Tarantino said that they had a much darker background that was never included in the movie. His story is that there was a hitchhiker who was picked up by Zed and Maynard. That happened 7 years before the movie. Over time, they beat him up, nagged him, and turned him into the masked, quiet figure we see hanging in the basement. They even made a longer version that made all of this clear. It showed how they kept the locked up and in their full control. But Tarantino chose to cut that scene in the end. He believed that being unclear would make things more painful. He was right, too. People filled in the holes more when they didn't know as much. The things people thought were much worse than anything he could have shown on TV. One more thing about it makes the whole thing even sadder. Tarantino said for sure that the man doesn't wake up after Butch knocks him out. He passes away, not from the punch, but from being tied to a tree. The rope got tighter as soon as he passed out, and that was it. He had been in pain for years, and the one time he could have been free was when he died. In the first draft of Pulp Fiction, a cab scene between Butch and Esmeralda was cut out, and the movie was never shown in theaters. For sure, if it had, it would have made the film much better. Angela Jones played the cab driver Esmeralda, and she wasn't just a weird supporting character. She was deep, more in depth. She tells Butch that Floyd, his opponent, died in the ring. The conversation then changes direction when Moralda talks about how death isn't seen as an end in her Colombian society, but as a change. When she was 9 years old, her grandfather died. That event changed the way she thought about life. Her words weren't just idle chit-chat. They went deep, made you think, and were full of meaning. Angela Jones was cast by Tarantino after he saw her in a short film called Curdled. It was a calm but scary voice that she gave Esmeralda. Esmeralda says, "I'm American, honey, our names don't mean shit." Butch says, "I'm American, honey." She says, "Names and death are the two things that tie everyone together." Then she says something very scary. She says that violence is the most honest thing that people do. That really hurts Butch. It seems to bother him. In the full scene, too, we get to see inside Butch's head. Esmeralda finds out that he told her that killing Floyd didn't make him feel anything. There is no shame or blame, just nothing. That's strange to hear from someone who later puts his own life at risk to help another man, but it makes more sense after hearing his story. During the war, his dad died in a jail camp. He had been violent before he got into a ring. He says that fighting is not the same for him. It's put together, you can do it. There is messy, emotional fighting on the street. It's like a curse that gets passed down from one man to the next in his family, leaving scars that no one can see. Let's go to 2021. Everyone was shocked when Tarantino said he was going to sell scenes from Pulp Fiction that no one had seen before as NFT. That meant that the person who paid the most could finally own these lost moments, like the long taxi ride, online. It wasn't that easy, though. Miramax, the company that made the movie, wouldn't have it. They said Tarantino didn't have the rights and sued him. Tarantino replied that NFTs didn't exist when he signed the contract in the 1990s, and he said that he still had the right to share things like handwritten scripts or audio material. While the lawyers fought, Tarantino went ahead with his plans. The NFTs came out in early 2022, but buyers didn't get real movie scenes. Instead, they got scanned pages of the script and Tarantino's voice telling the story. It's a whole other story that Pulp Fiction turned out the way it did. It wasn't just a hit. It changed everything about how independent films are made. The film cost only $8 million to make, but it made more than $200 million in ticket sales. It made Miramax a huge company and pushed big studios to take independent movies seriously. All of a sudden, every company wanted to make movies like Pulp Fiction. To get in on the action, they started to buy up small independent films or set up their own departments. It wasn't necessary to have a big budget or superpower effects to make a movie that shook the world. Then there's Bruce Willis. Everything changed when he joined Pulp Fiction. He was already a big star in Hollywood and was used to making millions of dollars every week. He didn't care about the money for this movie, though. His only goal was to work with Tarantino. That choice alone helped pay for the movie. Distributors all over the world were ready to pay a lot of money to get Bruce Willis's movie. In fact, the deals with other countries paid for the whole film before the cameras even started rolling. Bruce did more than just act in the movie. He provided the money to make it possible, and other famous people were moved to do the same thing. After that, it was common for big stars to go from small films to big hits, combining art and money in a way that had never been done before.